Hello, and welcome to Shrink, the podcast for the mind. I'm Philippe and I talk to the people who want to have a better understanding of their issues with weight and body image. Today, we're talking about burnout. And if just hearing that word, you felt a tiny tightening somewhere in your chest, your shoulders, or your stomach, that already tells me a lot. Because burnout is not just an idea we think about. It's something we feel. And I want to say this straight away. If you're listening to this while thinking, is this about me? Please know you're not alone. As you are listening, you might quietly ask yourself, how am I really doing these days? Many people who struggle with burnout don't identify with the word at first. They just feel exhausted, overwhelmed, disconnected, and often frustrated with themselves for feeling that way. Especially if you're someone who tries very hard to do things right, or you're someone who is used to being the reliable one, someone who cares deeply about other people's feelings, or has spent years fighting with their body, food, or self-image. Burnout often sneaks in quietly for people like you. But what is burnout really? Well, burnout is not just being tired. Let's start here, because this is where a lot of confusion and self-blame comes from. And if you've ever come back from time off feeling exactly the same, or even worse, you know that's not how it works. Burnout is a state of chronic physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion. That's a difficult word for me again, exhaustion. That happens when stress has been present for too long, without enough recovery, support, or even choice. What I often see in my work is this. Burnout doesn't happen because someone is fragile. It happens because someone has been strong for too long. Very often, burnout shows up in people who are high-functioning, empathetic, responsible, hard on themselves. People who don't easily say no. People who don't want to be a burden. People who think resting has to be earned. And this is where body image and people-pleasing come in. If you've spent years feeling at war with your body, constantly monitoring, correcting, fixing, well, that's already exhausting. If you add caregiving, emotional labor, or a job where you feel responsible for everyone else's well-being, the nervous system never really gets to stand down. Burnout is often the body's way of saying, I cannot keep doing this version of my life. How does burnout gradually build up? Because burnout is not dramatic at first. It's subtle, almost boring. It often starts with phrases like, it's just a busy period, or once this settles down, I'll breathe. Other people manage, I should do too. Let me give you an example. Imagine someone who is a caregiver, maybe professionally, maybe within their family. They're the one who remembers appointments, notices changes in moods, anticipates needs before they're spoken. At first, that role feels meaningful, even rewarding. But over time, the load increases. Expectations rise, and slowly, without realizing it, their own needs disappear from the equation. Or think of someone with strong people-pleasing tendencies. They say yes when they mean maybe. Maybe when they mean no. They scan rooms for emotional temperature. They adapt. They smooth things over. I know quite a lot about this for myself. I've been a people pleaser for so long. And it's been tough to learn how to say no. Or how to say, let me get back to you because I'm not sure I can do this. I'm not sure I can see you that day. It took me a lot of courage, yes, courage, to be able to make these changes. but the reward was amazing. I didn't feel like I had to please everyone all the time, because it just doesn't work. You cannot please everyone all the time. You have to take care of yourself first. And being a people pleaser doesn't make you a better person. It doesn't mean you're more generous. It doesn't mean you're more loving. It's something you can't help. It's something from your past history. It's something you've probably learned to develop when you were a child, to find your place. Burnout builds when there is constant giving and little receiving, when there is responsibility without power, when there is effort without recognition, and very little space to just be. Your nervous system is not designed for that. And yet, many people live that way for years. Let's see what are the early signs of burnout, what I would call the whispers before the crash. Because yes, it's a crash. Burnout is a crash. And it rarely arrives unannounced. It sends signals, quietly at first. The difficulty is that many people ignore those signals, especially if they're used to overriding their body. Early emotional signs might look like feeling emotionally flat, being more irritable than usual, losing patience with people you love, thinking, I just don't care anymore, and feeling guilty about that. Do any of these feel familiar? Even just a little? So yes, there are early emotional signs, but there are also cognitive signs, like brain fog, forgetting words mid-sentence, feeling overwhelmed by simple choices, reading the same email 3 times and still not taking it in. And there are also physical signs, waking up already tired, having tension you can't stretch away, having digestive issues or change in appetite. And for people with body image struggles, burnout can show up as increased body checking, more rigid food rules, or a stronger urge to control food or weight. Not because you suddenly lost progress, but because control can feel like safety when everything else feels too much. One sentence I hear a lot from clients who are dealing with burnout is, everything feels like an effort. This is an important clue. If you feel like everything feels like an effort, you may ask yourself, am I dealing with burnout? How does burnout affect daily life, health, and relationships? Well, burnout doesn't stay politely in one area of life. It spreads. Mentally, people often experience anxiety, self-criticism, a sense of inadequacy, feeling trapped or hopeless. And physically, long-term stress affects hormones, immune system, sleep, inflammation. Socially, burnout is incredibly isolating. You might cancel plans because you're exhausted, then feel lonely. You might withdraw because explaining feels like too much. You might feel resentful, then ashamed for feeling resentful. Caregivers and people pleasers often feel especially alone because they are used to being the support, not the one who needs support. Why is it so hard to talk about burnout? Burnout carries a lot of shame, especially in cultures that value productivity, thinness, self-control, and resilience. Many people think, I should be grateful. I chose this. Others have it worse. And burnout is invisible. You don't necessarily look unwell. So you hear things like, maybe you just need a break. Have you tried yoga? Maybe meditation would be a good thing for you, which can make you feel misunderstood or even more alone. Admitting burnout often feels like admitting failure, but it's not. It's information. Sometimes we may feel depressed or just exhausted, and we don't think we're dealing with burnout. So what's the difference? Well, exhaustion usually improves with rest. Burnout doesn't. If you've rested and still feel depleted, detached, or hopeless, that matters. Burnout is often linked to a specific context: work, caregiving, chronic stress. Depression tends to color everything. Burnout says, I can't keep doing this. Depression often says, I can't do anything. They can overlap, and both deserve support, professional care, professional support. I really insist on this. It's not just by reading books or listening to podcasts like mine that you will get better. If you're dealing with burnout and depression, two different things, you need some professional support. You need to see your GP, and then your GP will take that in charge and will send you to the right person to give you some help. If you're concerned about someone close to you, start with curiosity and care, not diagnosis. Instead of saying, you're burnt out, try, I've noticed you seem exhausted and withdrawn lately, and I care about you. Avoid fixing, you can't fix, and also avoid minimizing. Remember that presence is often more helpful than solutions. What does actually help in terms of recovery? As I said before, you need to find professional help, but I'm going to give you a few things that can maybe help a bit. Burnout recovery is not about becoming more efficient. It's about changing the conditions that made burnout inevitable. And this often includes rest that isn't earned, boundaries that feel uncomfortable at first, support, personal and professional, reconnecting with your body gently, and letting go of perfectionism. For people with body image struggles, this may also mean loosening control around food, practicing body respect instead of body discipline. This work is slow, and that's okay. I know from experiences with some of my clients that it can take a year, 2 years, sometimes 3 years to recover from burnout. It's okay. You don't have any other option anyway. You've got to work on this. Again, it's work, which is not pleasant when you feel like you don't have any energy to work on anything. But it takes time, and slowly you will recover. And the hopeful part is that burnout can change your life. Burnout can become a turning point. Not because it's good, because it's not good, it's really terrible, but because it forces honesty. Many people say, I would never want to go through it again, but I don't want to get back to who I was before. Burnout can teach you a few things. That rest is not laziness. That your worth is not your output. That your body is not the enemy. And that care goes both ways. And it can lead to a life that fits better. Before we end, I want to invite you to take one slow breath. Inhale gently and exhale longer. And another one, inhale gently and exhale longer. If you're listening and recognizing yourself, you're not broken. You're responding to too much for too long. And burnout is not a personal failure. It's a signal. And while the road back can be slow, change is possible, especially when you don't do it alone. Thank you for listening. Be gentle with yourself.